The red one.
So, we're trying to get ready for Chag HaShavuot, for the holiday that we got the Torah. The question is, are we accepting Torah this year? Are we ready also? So, let's try to learn what was Chag HaShavuot? A little bit. There's a lot of information and we won't be able to cover everything naturally, right? So some impacts about this Chag. In Agada Shel Pesach, right? When we read it on Leil HaSeder, we read a certain thing that's called Dayenu. If Hashem would bring us, and it says, bring us to Mount Sinai, and we won't get the Torah, Dayenu, it's enough also. So famous question is, what's the idea, what's the purpose of coming close to Mount Sinai and not accepting the Torah? The most important thing is the Torah, no? So the idea is, when we gathered in Mount Sinai, okay, try to imagine to yourself the atmosphere that was over there. So millions of people, okay, gathering around the mountain, and then these noises, the kolot, the brakim, the kol shofar, the anan, the shechina, and it says in Midrash Shocher Tov, on Sefer Tehillim, Amar Rabbi Yosef, Sinai minayin ba? Where comes from the word Sinai, or this mountain Sinai? Mehar HaMoriah comes from Har HaMoriah. No? Yerushalayim, where Nitlash kechala meisa, like we make a dough and we make take a piece of challah to make a pashat challah, nitlash kechala meisa, from the place that Yitzchak Avinu was supposed to be sacrificed. Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Ho'il v'Yitzchak avihem bnei Kabbalah, because Yitzchak, their father, was this is the place that the Jewish people are supposed to get, his children are supposed to accept the Torah. So, we have a parallel here between the two mountains. Akedat Yitzchak, what do we learn from this? What was the Akedat Yitzchak? That Abraham Avinu was supposed to go and sacrifice his own son, his beloved son, on the altar, on the Mizbeach. Hashem wanted basically to test him over there, see if Abraham is asking questions, he's not. When Hashem declares or tells to Abraham that he's supposed to go to this mountain and sacrifice his son, how exactly Abraham is going to do it? He could delay, take his time. Oh, sure, Hashem told me, he didn't tell me when. I could do it in 100 years. I don't have to do it now. We see that Abraham was quick. Quickly in the morning he gets up. Himself, he prepares his donkey himself. He goes and brings the woods, prepares his fire, prepares the knife, the things that he has to take. Quickly, he does it himself. He's not asking questions, he's not asking anything, he just goes. He has a long way to go from Beersheba till Yerushalayim. For 3 days he goes. 3 days that he thinks and rethinks. He can rethink about the whole idea. Should I? What's the idea? Hashem promised me. He could think and decide and do so many things during these days, but no, he went, he did it after 3 days, happily. So happens with when we got the Torah. Hashem tells Moshe Rabbeinu to tell the Jewish people, to ask them if they're ready to accept the Torah. Jewish people says, "Kol Hashem yaseh Hashem, whatever Hashem asks us, nase, yeah, we're ready, we're okay." They accept it. And then they are supposed to prepare for 3 days. During these days, they're supposed to get themselves holy, right? They are washing their clothing, they are purifying themselves to be ready to accept the Torah. And it's also basically, they could rethink if they really want it, you know? Think, it's a burden. 613 laws, it's not easy. You're taking responsibility. Are you willing to do it? Are you okay with this or not? And they were ready to accept the Torah, K'ish Echad, they were fine with this. So, it says that when Hashem gave them the Torah, they were afraid. They were not afraid from the fact that they're supposed to accept the Torah, okay? They were afraid just from the noise, from the effects that it came with. So they asked Moshe to tell them the 10 Commandments. They couldn't really hear it from Moshe. It was too much for them. And then later on, Moshe tells them, "Al tirau, don't be afraid. Ki levavum nasot etchem ba'elokim." Hashem just wants to test you. That's the idea of Har Sinai. Uba'avut yirato al panechem levilti techatav. So that you're going to fear Hashem after you see this, and you won't sin afterwards. So the Ma'amad Har Sinai wasn't just to give them the Torah, even the presence of Hashem there, even the way that they accepted the Torah, millions of people witnessing, seeing all whatever is going over there, right? All this is for them to accept Hashem and to be afraid of Him all the time. So, the same way that Abraham was tested, you know, Hashem wants to see if he has the faith, if he has the emunah in Hashem, okay? So, Bnei Israel were tested at that point to see if they want to accept the Torah and to follow Hashem no matter what. So, this is what it says, that Har Sinai was nitlash k'mo chala mi'isa mehar Moriah. So, because these 2 mountains had the same purpose, to test Abraham and to test the Jewish people, okay? So, when we speak about the 10 Commandments that we got over there, 10 Commandments that teach us, that takes us to all the levels that we can think about. The Torah guides us, the Torah teaches us that, you know, who is God. He speaks about faith, speaks about Hashem, took us from Egypt and took care of us. We have to be careful not to worship idols. We have to be careful not to swear, you know, in the name of Hashem. We have to be careful and keep Shabbat and honor parents, not tirtzach, not enough. All whatever it speaks about, 10 Commandments. I don't want to go through this, we did it in the past. Basically, we speak about every aspect in life. I want to ask you, how would the world look like today without the Torah?
Scary. Scary.
Scary?
Damage.
In the antique and ancient world, in the pagan world, I'll give you some examples. There were no such a thing like education to all.
Mm-hmm.
There was no such a thing. They didn't have kindergartens back in time. Didn't have elementary schools back in time. Didn't have high schools. Didn't have colleges. Didn't have universities. Didn't have all these. Only whoever could afford himself, okay, so he gained some knowledge. Whoever couldn't afford, they didn't know anything. They were analphabetic, didn't know anything. In Judaism, there is no such a thing that the father would not teach his children to read and write. He was poor, he was rich, it doesn't matter. every father, every parent had to teach his children at least to read and write, and of course Torah and laws and Musa and Jewish laws and all this. Okay, that's Judaism always used to teach. It says, "Veshinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam." That's the obligation of parents to teach their children. So, and if you think about this, a code of laws like the Torah that is so, there's so many laws over there, right? Obligates, demands people to learn it, to know the laws. If you don't know the laws, how can we keep it? No other religion, no other thing has so many laws that you have to see it and learn and do also. Here we have it, and all over the history, as I said, we had to teach and educate. Next, in the ancient world, there was no value to people's life. Unfortunately, they didn't care about people, about their life. There was no such a thing like a hospital. There were no ambulances and stuff like that. There were private doctors that would heal only people that could afford this treatment, only wealthy people. We hear about kings that had a private doctor. We read about, just people who could afford themselves, they had doctors coming to them and curing them. All the masses didn't have anything. And what if they die if they don't get treatment? Let them die. It's not our problem. That's how it used to be for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. I'll come to it in a second. So, no society before the Torah was given really gave any meaning to human beings' life. They didn't care so much about this, and they wouldn't waste money for that, like let's say dedicate an ambulance and all the equipment that we need in a hospital or something. People will not go and just give money just to cure people, They would care everybody about themselves. So the right to live, that today is so important, so essential. Every society, Western or modern society today, they have it. Today it's like self-evident, you understand, it have to be. It wasn't that years ago. And the Torah, in all kind of laws that we have, gave a very strong, the Torah teaches us in so many ways, think about your friends, don't think just about you. There's so many laws regarding this. More than that, on the contrary, if people, nations didn't, let's say, want certain children, they would kill them. They didn't care about them. If child is born, let's say, some kind of defect, minor or major, it doesn't matter, they would just kill them, abortions. We don't need people that are not contributing to the society. And if a child is born sick, so he's a burden on the society. We don't need him. We just let's get rid of him. That's how it used to be in ancient Rome, in Greek, recently in Germany, and so on and so on. So also they used to have killing just for entertainment. If you remember, in the Colosseum in Rome, they would gather 5,000 people to see how slaves are killed, how criminals are killed, and for them it was entertainment. Let's see how this animal, how this lion would kill him, and how he would scream, and what's going to happen. For them it was entertainment. And if it was boring, they would find more and more ways how to excite them, by, God forbid, burning these people, by execute these people, by behead them, by skinning them, What about Lo Tirtzach? What about all the laws that the Torah teaches us? Not only Lo Tirtzach, Dama, Dam, Badam. We have details in the Torah, what's okay, what's not okay, how to do, what to do. They didn't care about these things. Never in the world, in the ancient world, people were not equal in justice, okay? Only wealthy people could have a lawyer that would fight for them. If you cannot afford it, it's your problem, you know? So you're always a loser. And there was no such a thing like a court. There would be something private to this community, to this thing, but they didn't have, it something for everybody that judges them equally. Ancient Athens, from Greek, they are called the cradle of the democracy. This is where democracy started. They gave rights only to few, let's say thousands of people that had a land, that owned the land. They had full rights, full legal rights for their land and stuff. But what about all the hundreds of thousands of others? Women didn't have rights, slaves didn't have rights, criminals didn't have rights. And so we have לא תעשו עוול במשפט, not to prefer, let's say, not to prefer a wealthy man on a poor man. בצדק תשפוט את עמיתך. Justice is so important in our Torah. The Torah added to the calendar not only days that they had before and months and years, but also weeks. The Torah came with this idea of 1 day rest during the week. Now it's so normal. Now everybody's doing it. Now people have a whole weekend, not only 1 day, sometimes 2 or 3 days of vacation in a way, so that you come with a lot of energy for the next week. Till today, in the third world, there are some countries that they're working 24/7, constantly they work. No spirituality, no nothing over there. They just keep working, keep working, with no excitement, with no happiness. We just do it because they have to do it. What kind of world would it look like if we, as Jewish people, not Jewish people, if the Torah would not add so much values to the good values to the world? Wars. In every history is full of wars and winning and victories, and this nation still succeeded, that nation went down, and that's basically what history is all about. And they say that this is the only way to settle all kind of disputes between countries. There was no such a thing like United Nations of today. I don't know how exactly they do 100% good work over there, but there was no such a universal organization that cares for other people's rights and on behalf of them. And they believe that wars, they make heroes, and only through this you can do whatever you want. There's no such a thing like lo yisa goy goy chela velo yilmedu al milchama. The Torah does preach for peace, not just for killing, not just to, gain lands and become strong people. Where were all these orphanages, homes, and the social service agencies, and the institutions for the blind and for the deaf, and the soup kitchens? Jewish people, they like to do. Where beside this you see this, in other communities? Lately they do have, but for thousands of years nobody used to have such a thing as a service to the community. They always say it's not our problem, it's their problem. They have a problem, let them deal with this, and that's it. The Torah teaches us it's very important that you get out of your box and think about the others. So the Torah introduced the world, Hashem, that has a plan, has a purpose to the humanity. You know, if we do obey the commandments, right? So this is when this special world, the utopian world will exist. The future will be different, much better than the past and the present. So the Torah gives the people the ability to create life, to make decisions, better choices, not only to get power and get strength, but to make significant decisions. By people deciding if they want to do good or bad. By people deciding, you know, our Torah is full of stories of, let's say, Avraham Avinu. Would he obey Hashem or not? Would he decide that he is number one or Hashem is number one? Moshe Rabbeinu, you know, he doesn't want to listen to Hashem because he's afraid to hurt his brother. Yosef HaTzadik, you know, this wife of Potiphar, you know, seduces him, temptates him to make a sin, and he controls himself, and he works on it. These are the stories, these are the things that the Torah is standing on. Not another victory in a war, and another power, and being rich, and get another piece of land and another piece of land. It says in Mishlei about the Torah, "Yekara hi mipnimin v'chol chafetzecha lo yishvu ba." It says, and they say in the Yerushalmi, that all the good stones, the precious stones, diamonds, pearls, all the good things, if you gather them all together, it's not going to be equal to the Torah. Why? Why is it so important? So the Chavetz Chaim gives a mashal on this. He says all these that think that learning Torah is a burden, it's not for me, let other people do it, we have to go to work, we have to get money, we have to put our kids in yeshiva, if not, how the kids are going to learn, right? And we have to buy this, we were able to buy cheese for cheesecake, and sour cream, and butter, and all this. You know, it's money, and you have to. If you're not going to work, how are you going to gain these things? How are you going to have a beautiful home? How are you going to have jewelry? How are you going to have shoes for the kids? Or so he says, let's if we're going to how do you call the one that comes and checks what is the value of the house?
Inspection?
No.
Appraisal. If you're going to go and bring an appraisal and ask him, what is the value of this apartment, for example? So he makes some calculations, he checks, he sees how much the next house was sold recently. He'll tell you approximately what is the value of this apartment. Good. And then you ask him, what is the value of the whole block, you know, between 72nd and 73rd, let's say. So he makes his calculations, he measures, he checks, he sees what's the land, what's the value, if they have, I don't know, stores here, if they have some other things, if a lot of people live here, if it has the potential, whatever, he can give you an estimate. If you ask him what's the value of all this neighborhood, yeah, he'll make calculation, he'll find out. What's the whole town? He'll make calculation, he'll find out. But you ask him a question like, what's the value of the sun? Or the light of the sun? Can he give you an answer? What is the value of the light of the sun? Why not? It's Hashem's. Yeah, it's something that Hashem created, and you can give a value to something that you have a control on, something that's limited. have a place, have a location, but something that's not limited. How can you give a value exactly to this? So, and the sun is something that Hashem created. What about the Torah? The Torah was created even before this world. It says Hashem was looking at the Torah and created the world. So, how can exactly we evaluate the Torah? Right? It's much more than the stones and the diamonds and all these things that we mentioned before. And people, some of them, leave the Torah and go to work and do other things and think this is more important. It says, every day comes a voice from Har Choreb, Har Sinai, and declares, Oy lahem labriyot me'elvona shel Torah. Oh, they lose the respect of the Torah when they put it away, when they don't care about this. It's over there and nobody comes and picks it up and learns. Till today, yeah. Till today. We don't hear these words, but in Sefer Yirmiyahu was a prophet, it says, Mi eish chacham v'yavin et zot, who is the smart person, and will explain al ma avda haaretz. Why was the destruction, after the destruction of the temple, the land of Israel was empty, became empty. Everybody were exiled, to Babylon, here and there, and then the land was empty. They say even birds didn't go through in the sky. No animal. Why it was so empty? So a lot of people, they asked the wise people, they asked the prophets, they asked Malachei Hasharet, even the angels, and they couldn't explain why. And then it says that Hashem himself explained, Al uzvan torati, because people left the Torah. What, they didn't learn Torah? They did. But it wasn't important. You do it because you have to, you do it because, but you don't do it because you're happy about this, because you really want it. That wasn't the most important thing in the morning when you get up. It's not something that you go to because you're interested. If you have some spare time during the day, what are you doing? Yeah? You daven? Yeah, but I said when you have spare time, we have sometimes you have like 10 minutes that you have intermission, you have nothing to do. It's